Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics World, latest post covering finance and property news. It's Monday evening, even if it's a holiday weekend, and Edwin is back for another rant on a holiday weekend. Edwin, great to see your dedication.
Martin, there is no rest for the wicked. No rest. We're here. We're faithful, loyal and faithful. That's why you get the big bucks. So
I wish. Well, I would say that property never sleeps.
No, that's right. Look, and by the way, happy Australia Day. You're behind a day there, but yeah, I know you're still an Aussie at heart, Martin. So yeah, I'm wishing you a happy Australia Day. And yeah.
Thank you. I'll tell you what, it was really weird. I was messing around on YouTube last night, and I found this Transport New South Wales video of the train journey from Bondi Junction down to Wollongong, right? And I actually watched a bit of it, and I thought, I reckon, because I love the train line down particularly from Waterfall down to Thirroul. That area is brilliant. So it was quite nice just to refresh my memory of how beautiful that was again. And I miss a lot about Australia. But I have to say that I don't necessarily miss all the property spruiking, which is not quite as bad here as down there. And of course, I don't miss the politics with Albo coming in at 31% at the moment, and behind in the polls. So it's a bit of a shit show, isn't it?
You've got, as we keep on saying, you've got the Dutton and Albo. I still haven't come up with a real estate franchise that Dutton will launch post the election, but I'll come up with something. But at the end of the day, what the question is what's the difference between the two? Can you clearly and distinctively separate the two from where we're headed, and pertaining to this to the show, where we're headed in relation to the cost of living crisis, which affects both rentals and ownership of a property. I mean, what are the policies that are going to really change that around to benefit the Aussie community? They're both avoiding the big elephant in the room, and whilst they continue to do that and bring about all these other smoke and mirror events and policies, well, nothing's really going to happen. That's the unfortunate thing, and this is where we try to just bring clarity with the numbers, with the facts, with what's happening on the ground, with what we're hearing, the demographic changes, and how that affects the pricing of both, again, rentals and ownership. What's around the corner, what to be prepared for, and what not to wish for moving forward.
Yeah, it is interesting. I saw a Sky interview overnight with the Nationals leader, and he was differentiating policy around, well, we're going to increase the supply of LNG. Of course, the LNG price is set by the international price because we're actually exporting so much LNG overseas. So I'm not sure that's going to actually reduce the price of LNG in Australia. Reduce migration, but migrate in more people who can help with construction. And of course, the nuclear will ultimately bring electricity prices down, although he wouldn't commit to how long it will take and what the price drop would be. So you sort of think about, well, actually, these sort of mirage policies that are there. And of course, the other side is pretty much the same. None of them really want to tackle the root cause issues, the cost of living. And very importantly, a lot of the stuff that both sides are talking about, even the 1.2 million homes is going to take 5 years. None of this is going to provide relatively short-term relief to households. And I keep coming back to my surveys. There are a lot of people who are really, really feeling it at the moment because of the cost of living, because of the cost of housing, and whether you've got a mortgage or whether you're paying rent. Of course, the spruikers are out there talking about the Reserve Bank will have to cut rates when the inflation numbers come out later in the week. Although I saw Alan Kohler on ABC last night actually said, don't hold your breath too long for that, because whilst the inflation rate might be coming down towards target, the jobs numbers are so strong, and that basically is the other thing the RBA looks at. So he's not betting on a rate cut in February. So we will see. Interesting times. But of course, the most interesting conversation, and one we should spend a bit of time on today, is this, which is basically, is Brisbane going to be the next home price full shoe drop? I made a show yesterday which was based on some of the material that you may have seen, and of course they published this little chart here that showed that Yarra and Victoria has seen the listings rise in a lot of different places, and arguing that maybe, just maybe, the truth is that prices were actually sliding in Brisbane. Now, I have to tell you that it's always a little interesting question when you sort of see these high-level stories. But, you bowled in and said you're going to talk about it. So let's get on to it.
Yeah, look, it is. I did watch a show. I do watch the shows as much as I can during the week, and I watched that one yesterday, and because everybody seemed to be talking about the drops in prices in particular suburbs, and they mention it. And of course, what we do, what you and I do, is we go straight to the source, and we go to the industry groups, and we go to grassroots level, to get information to see what's actually happening, to whether it either supports what the mainstream is saying, what the legacy media is saying, or whether that information that is lagging data, or is it just somebody that's sitting in an Eiffel Tower or in the basement of the parents' home that reports for the AFR or Sydney Morning or whatever the case may be, these so-called property reporters. Well, look, so in relation to the story, it comes back to Bico, Constantini put that up, and that came up on the feed as well, and that's what I took a snapshot of that conversation, and he tagged bow-tied stocks, and these are people that they make commentary about property, and along among other things, obviously, but they do take a strong position on property, and a lot of it I feel is unfortunately they in most cases many of these commentators just go out half-cocked and make decisions. But then when you search into the Twitter handles or the X handles and everything else, you sort of wonder, well, what wheelbarrow are you pushing? So I thought, you know what, let's break this up. I'll take it both ways, and let's see whether prices are dropping or whether they're not, and hence the reason why I sort of dug a little bit deeper and to get to the bottom of it. Just before the show, and this is property drops where the article said that houses in Brisbane's affluent inner eastern suburbs, Hawthorn, East Brisbane, Norman Park, Seven Hills, and Bulimba, racked up close to 3 to 4.2% drops. So I thought, okay, that's interesting based on the numbers that we've been looking at in general terms across the Sydney market. And just before the show, Elisa Smith posted even that funny website that I always have contrarian views on. even they themselves had nothing other than to post the fact that hey, prices are actually across the board. If you want to look at general terms across Brisbane, in the last 3 months, they've actually been selling $11,000 above their asking price. I mean, these are just different indicators. Like I said, you don't just rely on one source; you rely on many in order to come closer to the truth. So I just thought that was interesting, and obviously moving forward from what I dug in my conversations and getting getting to the grassroots level from the industry, and going to also going into the databases that we subscribe to and pay a handsome fee on a monthly basis in order to get the information. And I pulled out those charts that I sent to you as well on Hawthorn. Okay, Hawthorn, and this is data that's a lot more in line with current trends than CoreLogic. CoreLogic lags by about 72 days. This you could say is closer to where the industry really is at. And so look, and let's say Hawthorn, according to to Pricefinder, they've gone backwards 2.4% in 2024. You've got East Brisbane, Queensland, 4169 postcode, went back 2.7%. I mean, there's a lot of other information that we get, but I just sort of try to summarize it down into this points here just to get an overview, because that's what that article was presenting. But then you look at Norman Park, and they're up to they've got an increase of 4.5% last year. Then you look at Seven Hills in Queensland, which is a 4170 postcode, and they had a whopping rise of 14.3%. In 2024. Then you go to Bulimba, Queensland, 4171 postcode. They had a rise of close to 6%, right? So this is the difference between somebody talking in general terms, what from those articles that are posted, and then the reporters latch onto those and try to create what I say. Emotion rather than getting into the nitty gritties and see what's actually happening. Like I said, you can. This is my side of the fence. I would argue that the data that I get and we share on the DFA on the Walk the World Monday evening property rants is closer to reality than what the other sources show. But obviously it goes back to what you and I always say, Martin, and that is being granular, being specific, being and really it's up to what the individual wants to buy, looking at buying, and for what reason. And then when you extrapolate that, or when you break that down or expand on those points, then you got to understand also who's selling, why are they selling. And a brief overview of those charts, you will see that previous years, some of those suburbs had 20, 30, 40% capital growth in 1 year, since 2020. So you could say in a drop of 2.5% or 2.2% is really means very little, other than if you bought earlier in the year, and then you sold later on, which I very much doubt it, because you got asking the agents who's selling, and it's like what you and I have been saying, Martin. It's downsizers. People that have been holding on to property for many years. So they've had the 20, 30, 40% rises over the last few years. So to them, a 2% doesn't really mean a lot. But this is what again we try to expand on and get people more prepared for when they go out there looking, especially if you're looking in the Brisbane area for property markets. Get prepared, then don't get complacent and don't just rely on one source, but reach out, spread out, widen your information network in order to make a better constructive and more educated decision moving forward. Don't just rely on the emotion.
I think that's really important advice there, Edwin, because it is clear to me that people can get misled. Now, it's interesting. I was chatting to somebody through my one-on-one service the other day who was a first-time buyer and bought up in some of the areas around Brisbane, just to the north of the city. Bought about 18 months ago. So, prices were very strong and they leveraged themselves up to the max to be able to buy. It was a freestanding home and it needed a bit of work. But they are now regretting that decision for three reasons. Firstly, in that particular area, there's been a significant rise in listings in the last few months and prices have have slid back in that area. Secondly, and more worryingly, they didn't do enough due diligence on the way in, and they've discovered a whole lot of bad stuff gone on in the property. In other words, structurally speaking, it's one of these older properties, a lot of wood in it. A lot of that wood has got termites and things in it. So suddenly they're up for a significant additional expenditure than they thought they were going to have because they didn't look at it on the way in. And thirdly, and the most interesting, is that the down the road, there's just been approved a really big development of high rise. So effectively, this is an area that had been low rise for quite some time, and they didn't check the planning. And now they've discovered that literally 2 doors down, they're actually going to be confronted with a significant high-rise development in the next few weeks and months. So suddenly the character of the area is changing as well. So, when you actually sort of line all this up, it comes back to making sure you do your due diligence, right? So in this case, urgent wish to buy, first-time buyer, had saved up hard, was watching prices in Sydney rising, in Melbourne rising, Sydney rising, and so decided to go to Brisbane, where prices were not quite as high, but still rising, and could get in. So moved to Brisbane, and then bought effectively the wrong property at the wrong price point for the wrong reason, then had significant problems with the property in terms of structural defects, and then also bought effectively in an area where the planning rules have changed. This is a classic recipe for disaster, and unfortunately, it's very hard to see how they're going to get out of this without losing significant cash.
Well, if they're watching the show, what I would recommend to them to do is go and talk to the neighbours and see if they can pull the neighbours together and potentially see whether if the new planning regs there, the new planning instruments for development of medium or high rise, whether their land envelopes fall into that, and if they do, talk to the neighbours and get out, put a deal together, talk to a local agent, and see if you can on sell it to a developer that's got the appetite to build as a development proposal. Obviously, then the somebody that knows what they're doing, they'll work out the land envelope when all the properties are put together, and then from there they'll work backwards as to what each individual will get per square meter per se, and because that'll determine the amount of lots that the developer can build, and just do a reverse feasibility to see who's entitled to what dollars, and move on. But to be surrounded by that high level of construction, and in some cases, Martin, from experience watching this happen here in Sydney, of course, in some cases, many individual homes or freestanding home owners gained a great deal, amassed great fortunes. You've got your Eppings, Carlingfords, those areas, your northwest regions, where all of a sudden your 750 square meter blocks of land were just absolutely gold mines that went from being worth at one stage 850,000 all the way to 2.5 million almost within months. And it was a huge windfall. But then there are other areas also in Sydney where the monstrosities that are built only end up being get turned into ghettos, and all the freestanding homes around these monstrosities just bear the brunt of the riffraff that ends up living in those high-rise developments. So look, for what it's worth, for an early tip in the show, that's what I would be doing if I was that person. Get a hold of a local agent and see what they can do if they wanted to, because at this time, without knowing what you can do or can't do with that block of land, if you can amalgamate it with the other blocks, sinking more money into the property could just be literally that, just throwing money down the drain. Unless you're really planning on staying there for a very, very long time. So it goes back to researching, planning, not relying on one source, and more importantly, not just relying on the selling agent telling you what a great deal you made.
Yeah, it's interesting you've made that recommendation, because that was actually one of the things that I suggested. Before you actually commit to spending more money on trying to patch up the property that you probably can't afford to do, think a bit more laterally. And, whilst it might be an uncomfortable journey to take, it might actually be the one that is, financially more beneficial. But I'll tell you, the thing that I find quite often, I don't know whether you see this, Edwin, but when people have made a bad property purchase decision, they get they pull back into their shell, and they're then worried about making more decisions. And, well, maybe we'll do nothing, or do the minimum. Or sometimes a bold action, rather than just incremental, it'll be all right, is the thing to do. Because the trouble is that if you are in quicksand, unless you actually can take a quick action to get away from it, you get sucked in, and the longer you stay, the worse it gets. And, I actually was relatively aggressive in my suggestions, not giving advice, but just laying out some different options. And in fact, the one that you laid out was the one that I think probably makes the most sense, because it's clear to me that in the area, with the rezoning that's gone on, there is potential there. So fascinating to sort of look that through. Let me just come back to Brisbane one more time, because I thought this quote from Shane Oliver was quite interesting. Brisbane looks to me like a really soggy market, and I wouldn't be surprised if house prices go negative in the next couple of months, he said. And he made the suggestion that perhaps it's sort of 6 months behind Sydney or so. But interestingly, he did also suggest that they could escape a downturn if the Reserve Bank cuts interest rate next month, as expected by the financial markets. And of course, some people are saying May, some people are saying maybe later. And I think it's quite interesting that now people are hanging on to their hat to say, well, maybe the RBA will save us. I will just make the point that I made a show the other day called Even Rate Cuts Won't Help Home Prices, because the point is that actually we've got to the point now where quite a few people are to the point where even if we get 50 basis points of rate cuts over this year, and that's what the markets are suggesting at the moment, that's not going to be sufficient to be able to actually take the pain away from many people. So I'm a little more skeptical that, one, the RBA may not cut rather than cut, as I mentioned earlier on. And secondly, even if they cut a couple of times, wouldn't necessarily be enough to be able to make a huge difference for people who've got in over their heads quite seriously and for quite a long period of time. So I do think we are in an interesting stage in the market. But what I find most fascinating, and I'm seeing it particularly in Sydney at the moment, is that there's really quite high attendance now in some areas of Sydney. So there's still a lot of interest in property. And in fact, you've taken to making some little posts. And this was one that I saw when you were talking about high attendance in many markets across Sydney. Selling agents are smiling today. So what's going on here?
Well, look, it's interesting. Across the open houses that we attended on Saturday, the majority had very high attendance. Some of the guys reported high attendance. The Northwest region, I was mainly working in the inner west. All my opens were around the inner west, and one out west, southwest region. And yeah, the chatter with the attendees, Martin, was also one of serious buyers. They weren't your typical tire kickers in your neighbourhood, your neighbourhood sticky bigs to see what's going on, to see whether they're going to put their properties on the market. I would say that the majority of the attendees were that genuine buyers. I also came across two selling agents, buying agents. I spoke with one of them. I overheard the other one. I didn't speak to her directly, but I did speak to one of them. They were actually looking for properties to buy for themselves. And the one that I spoke with, she was very peeved about seeing the amount of people, and she works in those areas as well, for looking for properties for clients. And she was peeved because she couldn't believe the number of attendees at the open house inspections. The other observation there was that what we were talking earlier on, and that is the fact that a lot of these properties, or dare say, look, 50% of the properties, and perhaps even more, there was a lot of attention that required moving forward, and this is where people are going to get caught out. We're talking properties, from 2.5 to $3 million, and then when you have to do extra work as soon as you buy the property, anywhere between 5 and 10% off the bat, because a lot of the issues that are in the property, they're not reported on the building and pest inspection report that people get when they get those dodgy before you bid building inspection reports that the agents give them. Well, then, it's another shock to the system. And as our mate in the industry says, that unless, because of the deregulation in 1989, basically from then you didn't have to put down, or you don't have to report on anything unless it is going to abstain or prevent the person from inhabiting the dwelling. Figure that one out, Martin. That is the extent of the reports that you get, and hence the reason, that is one of the reasons why they get away with all the bullshit that's or the little information, the lackluster information on these lightweight reports that you get. And people need to seriously pay attention to this area because of the costs moving forward. As the people that you spoke to last week, that you mentioned that, surprise, not only were there a lot more properties on the market, but there was changes to the to the planning regulations, to then major structural issues with the building itself. So, and it is a costly exercise, particularly when you're talking about millions of dollars to enter the market. So that were the two observations that we've been coming across, and obviously that correlated with some of the information that we shared before. It also keeps on correlating with the comments from the agencies and agents that I often ring back on the Saturdays and on Sundays and on Mondays to see what how they fared, just to stay in tune with the market. But it's interesting to see the landscape, how it's playing out. The numbers themselves that are on market, in my opinion, would have to really double. And more to the point, the freestanding home numbers will have to double before that area of the markets across Sydney is quenched, because the demand for a freestanding home is just increasing and increasing. Hence the reason I've said we won't go past this year without without having there'll be reports that there won't be a freestanding home in Sydney in the Sydney region under $1 million.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I don't know whether you saw this, but the HIA also published a report. It actually was jointly with CoreLogic on land prices. And they reported that the median price of land across Australia reached record highs, with a lack of availability nationally increased by 7.6% in the September quarter to $366,510 a lot. And they did make the point that, of course, it varies in different areas. You can see there that Sydney's, 710,000 is significant rise. Is it interesting, though, that they also reported that while Brisbane and Perth recorded the strongest growth in median land prices, up by 21.2%, the report found that in areas such as Illawarra in New South Wales and Geelong in Victoria, where the median price is lower than their respective capital cities, lot sales have increased by over 50% compared to the previous year. And I think that's quite interesting, that people are looking beyond perhaps just the main central business district and surrounding areas, but looking out in the regions too. So the interesting observation there, Edwin, is that if you do decide to go and buy a lot, you need a builder. You need a builder who's going to be able to build, right, to a price, And that price, of course, has gone up dramatically because of the cost of labor and the cost of materials. So you're paying more for the lot, you're paying more for the builder, assuming that he's still going to be able to hang around or she's going to be able to hang around to build. And we're paying more because of the high prices. And it was quite interesting just thinking about this in the context of what that earlier discussion I mentioned on Sky, because he was talking about the fact that the costs of building new places are much higher than they should be because the building regs are too high. So in fact, the Nationals leader was going to suggest that maybe we could look at taking out some of the building standards. I don't know what you think, but to my mind, building standards ain't great at the moment, right? And we've seen that in some of the new builds. And if you actually build down to a price and take out some of the building regs, surely that's going to make the situation worse. So you can build stuff, but it's not necessarily going to be very sustainable. So there's another real problem here that, if you are going to be funneling people into the new builds, firstly, of course, the average cost infrastructure-wise, according to the Productivity Commission, is about $75,000 higher if you go into new area relative to building into an area where infrastructure already exists. And then secondly, if you build down with lower building regs, or indeed build down because the builder decides to use cheaper materials, you end up with a property that probably is going to cost a lot more to maintain. This is a nutty scenario as far as I can see.
Yeah, look, the code isn't the issue. In my opinion, the main issue is the compliances around insurance. Around look, I run various businesses, and I carry various licenses, public liability and professional indemnity. And if I add on the insurance to my personal workhorse, I cough up on I think it's either the 3rd or the 4th of February, which is just around the corner. Shit, just reminded myself. I cough up close to $25,000 in insurances just to start the year, Martin. So, and then when you've got building companies and you've got the insurances that they have to front up before they start major works, it is very, very costly. In 2012 or thereabouts, I wrote an article, and it's still online. I've shared it on the show a couple of times, and back then in 28 between around 2010, I wrote an article, and that article was to extrapolate what it costs to build apartments or for a developer to build the costs around new builds. It was mainly focused on apartments, and the focus around that time was around Parramatta. And I came to the conclusion that close to 43% of the building costs post purchasing of the land was taxes and levies, and that is that is what keeps these costs of construction. It's not about reducing or diminishing or watering down the NCC. In my opinion, it's watered down, as you said, it's watered down enough as it is. The minimum standards. Shit, that is why we've got mold issues in a lot of high-rise developments, because they are built to the minimum compliance and the minimum standards. You'd be flabbergasted. Our audience will be absolutely flabbergasted what the minimum standards are in the tolerances that when you've got new builds, when you get a building inspector to do what's called a handover inspection of a building. What the minimum standards are, or what you could argue in a tribunal in order to make a claim against the builder to come back and rectify the works to what yours, Martin, and my minimum, my standards will be chalk and cheese. We are miles, we are miles apart. And this is, and it's fascinating that they want to go down that rabbit hole, because it's only just going to get worse. We've tried to bring in cheaper material, and we'll continue to bring in cheaper material from overseas, and that's going to create another issue in 5-10 years down the track. It's going to be a health issue that's going to be detrimental to the whole industry. So yeah, a lot of it, Martin's really it's to do with the cost, and of course, as I said, also is it's very, very difficult to get a junkie off crack, and a lot of the builders, they've tasted blood. And a lot of builders and main contractors are not going to pull the prices down. They'll squeeze the subcontractors, but they themselves won't pull the price down. There is no freaking way that they'll pull the price down. Not in the next 3 to 5 years. I know a lot of people on many social media platforms are all thinking and believing that's what's going to happen with all this influx of migrants and so-called people that are being seconded in order to work in the building industry. It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. You're going to get cheaper labor, yes. You're going to get shoddier end results. You're going to get lackluster, but yet compliant lackluster construction. But in terms of the cost, it's not going to make a dent. It's not going to make a dent in cost because they've tasted blood. The taste of blood, and it's sweet, and it's going to be very, very difficult to wean them off that fix.
Good point. And unfortunately, the economics of construction are biased in a way that is quite interesting. And again, I was chatting the other week to a small operator, small business owner in the construction sector, so a subby basically. And he is getting squeezed left, right, and centre because, of course, he has to work for some of the bigger guys. The bigger guys basically say, "We're not going to pay you more," right? So he has to work longer for less. And it's just incredible.
And they have to wait, and they have to wait 120 days in some cases, Mark.
Yeah. I was going to say exactly that. And the other point was that he was waiting longer and longer to get paid. So, all the cash flow pressures are being funneled via the big guys into the small guys, and it's the small guys who've got nowhere else to turn to that are actually under the pump. Now, the other interesting observation, and you've touched on it in your notes, and I've also got some stuff here. There's a real question about risks to properties. And, whether you think about bushfires or coastal erosion, the fact is that we're finding the situation now where some properties are, getting hard to insure. There was this article here that there was a call to pull back coastal development because of, the fact is that you've got too much erosion. Maybe there's $25 billion worth of Australian property at risk. And of course, they went into it a bit further. It was a paper from the Australian Journal of Emergency Management. It's interesting because down in the Illawarra, we had a number of properties right on the coast that lost a lot of their gardens simply because of the coastal erosion. It just went on and on and on. And, just trying to get a handle on the impact of this is quite interesting. And in fact, you've sent me this little article here, which is fascinating, because it suggests that maybe 1 in 10 homes could be uninsurable by 2035. Now, this is a big deal. Now, I recognize, of course, that some people are unable to pay for insurance now because it's too costly. But insurers more and more are refusing to insure some types of property. Now, that changes the landscape quite considerably, doesn't it, when it comes to thinking about property purchases?
100%, man. This is what people aren't thinking. This is where I said that a lot of people that unfortunately they make decisions based on emotion rather than logic and rather in reason, and rather than and they're not getting the professionals, that they're not being surrounded by professionals to direct them and give them advice and legal advice and other advice around that big purchase. Now, many of our followers are Sydney based, and some would know but a lot probably don't know, or aware that even Spring Farm, the suburb close to Alderside, Camden, Narellan, that area down there, the old chicken farm, and where they backfilled some of those areas, some of the landscape there, but it was done badly, and there was if you recall, there was a class action in I think it was instigated, that was put in 2021 from memory. And and there was a big push, and they were taking different builders to court, and one of the builders actually bought one of the homes just to say, hey, listen, I live here. I bought a home. This year, I believe it's not my building standard. It's not my building practice. It's the land. It's the dodgy works that were done, the civil works that were done. Pre us buying or you buying the lot and us building on top of it. But a lot could be said. I mean, there's big arguments, but there's huge costs. But just to get to that point is that a lot of people don't know that there's quite a number of conveyancers in the Liverpool region, conveyancers and solicitors in the Liverpool region, that as soon as they're presented with a contract that's got the Spring Farm address on it, they'll tell the clients point blank, you better go check with an insurer to see if they will insure your property and how long you will be insured for. I mean, and these are homes, and I sent you the screenshot also of some of the prices that people are paying for homes there, Martin. It is absolutely gobsmacking. It's scary stuff, and this is what the desperation of the first home buyers are just jumping in and buying this without knowing. The unfortunate thing, Martin, is that with what we've seen in your Blacktown areas, in your Parramatta's, even in early days in your Chinese affected markets, influence markets, where but in this area it's a different demographic of people, where the people that are buying, the young people that are buying them, or the first home buyers that are buying them, whether they're young or middle aged or whatever, but first home buyers of a particular ethnic background will go to their to a conveyancer or a solicitor of their ethnicity, and they rely on them. And unfortunately, they're not they're not the right professionals that you should be talking to. And if you recall, there's that property that's last year got issued the demolition order on in Blacktown, where I believe that's going to cost them in the tune of $250,000 to demolish, and then they end up with half a house. Again, it's a certain type of demographic that are buying into these areas, and they go to their compadres and that speak the language, but they don't know any better. But these buyers don't know any better, and they think that because they've got licenses or certificates of to practice, that they're going to give them the right advice. Unfortunately, they don't. And these are the people that get sucked into buying these homes. But then you've also got your Jordan Springs and a big part of the Richmond area as well, those flood affected areas where people have just got to be absolutely careful. Like I say, everything looks great on a shiny brochure, on a glossy brochure that when they get it at the open house inspection. But that's not what you should be focused on. You should be focused on what you don't see in the information, in the fine print, in the contracts of sale.
Yeah, very good point. And of course, the question about insurance is, you may be able to get insurance, but if you can, what the price of that insurance is, and look at the trend over the last few years, because we know that average insurance premiums are up 20, 25% for many people and will continue to climb. And other areas, even now, it's not insurable. And of course, if it's not insurable and you've got a mortgage, well, you won't be able to get a mortgage if it's not insurable. So that's going to be a problem. So these are really, really important messages in terms of actually people making good decisions. And unfortunately, as you say, the glossy brochures and all the promises, they're cheap and easy to make. But when it actually comes to reality on the ground, it's a whole different story. So it's worth, I think, folks, doing your due diligence. We keep saying it, but it continues to be true. Let's just briefly look at the listings. We're starting to see now some shifts there. So in Sydney, on the 20th of January, there were 17,322 listed. If we jump forward to the 27th, 17,969. So we are seeing a further rise. And in fact, the trends are showing that the listings are, well, tracking ahead of where they were last year, I think is the polite way of putting it.
Yeah, that's right. And we're seeing the momentum, but again, it goes back to what I keep on saying, Martin. We really got to see those numbers, break the 22,000. 22 and getting close to the 25,000 mark before this beast is spent. But we've got an election coming on. You've got rumors of rate cuts, chatter of rate cuts and this and that and whatever, and people are going to be making decisions based on all these factors. And I get my gut feel is that we're not going to see the numbers that a lot of commentators are wishing for and have been chatting about, and regardless of the pain that the potential sellers are feeling and the need to sell. Typically when there's an election coming on, people sit back, and I guess my thoughts on this. Greater thoughts on this is if people feel that we're going to have a Liberal government moving forward, regardless of your political position, regardless of political stance, but the general thought is going to be that a Liberal government's going to be better than the previous Labor government, and therefore there's going to be more confidence. America 2.1, and we could have potentially an economic, a positive outcome on the other side, and therefore they're not going to be wanting to list before the election, but post the election they'll hold back a little bit longer. That's my thoughts. It would be, obviously it's not going to help buyers because there'll be less on market right up to the election, in terms of not so much less on market from last year or from 2023, but it'll be less numbers on market to really have an impact on the demand that we've got, and the rising demand from the silent tigers and the new kids on the block. That is a phenomenon that people just don't realize, Martin. People just don't realize how transforming those two buying groups are going to be in 2025.
No, I think it's a really good point, and there's a lot to play out, I think, this year. So you're right, the election, it hasn't been called yet, but it's got to be before May sometime. The question of the RBA, will they cut, won't they cut, when they cut, how much will they cut by? Will the state governments really start getting the flow of new properties in or not? And of course, there's a lot of lip service to that, but still, frankly, haven't seen much in the way of change on the ground yet. And then, of course, the whole question of the supply of builders and the ability of builders to build, and materials, which, of course, then links directly back to two external factors: what's going to happen to China versus the US, I guess. And the other one is migration. The migration story is still unclear And whilst there's, again, lip service to dialing back migration, the truth is that there's a lot of significant demand still there in the system at the moment. So I think that those things are going to play out. So certainly in my surveys, I'm seeing quite a few people who are just saying, well, we'll sit and wait and see how it goes. Now, interestingly, in your scorecard, this is the new Edwin special. Not a lot of real movements, but there still seems to be a bit of a change that a lot of freestanding homes have slipped under offer.
That is the trend, Martin. Although I'm just staying consistent with the source, and I'm not removing from the list the ones that come under offer. Generally, agents tend to hold those under offer, or they don't take them off to put them on the sold ledger, for a week or 2 weeks, just so they can get a bit of free publicity from other potential sellers in those areas. So when you start going through some of these areas, for example, in Kings Park, you'll see 6 listings there in Kings Park, but just going through the sites, 4 of them are under offer. And and a few other areas as well in your freestanding home sections. So that's going to be really, as I said, it's a snapshot, a cross section, and I think I've tried to put in as much variety as I can to give us an idea and understanding how sort of drilling down more into suburbs so that people can get an idea. We can we can chart the numbers through 2025 as they unfold, and then see how the mainstream narratives compare to what yourself, myself, and our followers see live on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, and I think this granularity is really important because not all suburbs behaving the same way, and this is one of the critical things that people need to understand. These high-level numbers, listings are up in Sydney or down in Sydney, or prices are up or down or wherever, they mask what's really going on the ground. Now let's look at the Melbourne situation with regard to listings. So on the 20th, we had 26,730. Jump forward a week to the 27th, you had 27,211, so a similar trend there. Once again, it's worth highlighting, I think, that standalone houses are leading the way. And certainly the research that I've done recently suggests that the Melbourne market is still a little bit weak, although there's a few signs in places that maybe the sales momentum is picking up a little bit, and that's because prices have already dropped. And there's a little bit of a split view as to whether the prices in Melbourne will continue to drop or whether, in fact, they will begin to sort of bottom along, simply because there is a little bit more enthusiasm now of some prospective purchasers. But I do note that I continue to see a high count of ex-investment properties coming on the market, and those properties are quite often in relatively poor condition. And so if you are going to be thinking about buying an ex-investment property, even more important to do due diligence, isn't it?
Definitely. And this is where, or unless you've got crypto, because that seems to be the trend down in Victoria, right? To buy overpriced land in crypto.
It's been known. Let's then.
I'm going to get in trouble. The Kryptonians are going to hate me. I think I lost 10 Kryptonians that were following me on X. I think I probably lost 10 or 12. But it's interesting. Hey, each to their own. Each to their own.
Well, Trump is the crypto president. He's talking about holding crypto reserves. And of course, he launched his own meme coin, as we discussed last week, right? So who knows? But it is interesting. Did you notice, this is just a pure aside, one of the things in the edicts was that he wants to actually drive crypto, but he also has stopped the Federal Reserve from following through with the central bank digital currency, which I thought was actually quite interesting. That's going to be worth following through if that really happens. Who knows?
Yeah, but Martin, I don't know whether you've got a crypto guy on the show from time to time. You can ask
absolutely.
him the question.
Yeah,
you can ask him the question for me.
Yeah.
Or remind me when he's going to come on and be live again, because uh, well, I just want to know, right? Dusty and I want to know when can we buy coffee with Bitcoin? When can I go to a counter and buy coffee with Bitcoin? And it can be it can be a smooth transaction as that. I can open my wallet and say, listen, I want a cup of coffee for myself, cup of coffee and cat biscuits for Dusty.
Yeah, well, there are a few places around, but you have to search it out, and it's not that straightforward. But we will see. Anyway, let's not go down the crypto rabbit hole. Will be a 2-hour show rather than a 1-hour show. Let's go instead to Brisbane and just look there. So on the 20th, we had 3,628. A week later, 3,774. So listings are again on the rise. And interestingly, if you look at the auctions now, beginning to see some movement. Of course, we had the long weekend over last weekend. So 1st of February looks to be a little bit stronger. Open inspection numbers still pretty strong.
Yeah, look, they were strong. I didn't do a snapshot on this Friday, but yeah, in comparison to the auction numbers out there, and we're just going to see what. Now, I think Super Saturday is not the first, but the second week of February. That's going to be interesting to see what numbers come up for that. And that's pretty much when the market, in the sense of gauging, or one of the indicators that the mainstream latch onto to monitor the sentiment. The property sentiment obviously is it really starts kicking off in the second week of February, pretty much after the school break, when school commences again, and then you got your Super Saturday to kick it off, and then we'll get our Tom Panos index back on again.
I look forward to that. Let's just briefly look at the rentals. So in Sydney on the 20th, 14,022, dropped to 13,243 on the 27th. And in Melbourne on the 20th, 13,355 and dropped to 12,780. So we are seeing a fall in rental listings in both of those markets. And certainly in my conversations with people recently, 2 factors. One is availability of rentals is definitely getting squeezed. The number of rental properties, certainly in Melbourne, are dropping. If you look at the bond count, for example, if you can believe those numbers, which of course is always an interesting question. And the other is that the cost of rentals are still rising, whilst the index that some have been quoting looks as though it's turning down. So the growth is a little lower. Rents are still rising. So the costs of getting somewhere to live are, if you're in the rental sector, still rising. And of course, mortgage rates are still very high at the moment with the high interest rates. Although, of course, high is relative term, not high relative to long-term rates, but relative to where they were 3 years ago. So interesting to see how that plays out. And I guess as we come to the end of the show, you've got a bit of a list. Very important list, actually. So let's just go through that list and give people some suggestions about what to think about.
Yeah, look, based on that article that we shared earlier on with regards to the cost of insurance moving forward, obviously there's been a number of things that Dusty and I have done to our home, to the property, in order to tell our insurer that what we've done, what we've rectified, what we've added to the property in order to make it more more insurable, if that's the term, or for our payments to insurance payments to premiums to go down, because people have also got to remember it's not these areas that are affected by major issues, floods, fires, or any other calamity, sinkholes in your Jordan Springs because of the bad geotech works, or the backfill, in your all these other areas where you've got subsidence issues as well. But you know what, the insurance companies spread that load across the board as well. So whether when we questioned our insurer as to why early last year, why our insurance went up by, I think it was about $1,200 or $1,300 in one swoop. It was because of the floods down around in the PN. We're miles from the bloody thing, and we're probably almost a kilometre above that. But they spread the load. So it was important for us to reduce our premiums by informing the insurer of the upgrades to the property. And this is just a quick list that I thought of that people could make and put together and start attacking those one at a time. Upgrade your windows, especially if you're in your lane coves, your Pimbles, your northern regions, or anywhere close to the bush, to bush area, which is a lot of areas. You can upgrade your smoke detectors to hardwired. From your battery operator to hardwired, which will also upgrade your electrical systems as well. Maybe you need to upgrade your gutters, your downpipes, and in order to protect yourself, and also add more security around the house as well. Because of the other issues that we face when we go through living crisis, high living crisis, and everything else that unfolds from that. And that's just the beginning. I mean, there are a lot of others, but also make it a point to inform your insurer what you've done and document what you've done. Get them to document as well, and ask, because if you don't ask, you don't get. Ask if you would get a rebate or a you'd be pay less, or maybe get a suggestion from your insurer as to what would help, what would bring your insurance premiums down, if you did something to the house.
Yeah, a couple of observations there. The first is that, of course, a lot of people, when they go through the insurance renewal, just religiously pay up anyway. There is the old trick whereby insurers offer cheap insurance for the first year, but then actually rely on apathy to ramp it up. So whatever you get by way of your premium update, make a fuss and negotiate it down. They'll almost always give you something off if you actually make a fuss. The second point is that you mentioned the windows. One of the things I discovered quite early on was that if you have window locks on all the windows, that actually can reduce the cost of insurance, quite noticeably. So it's important to make sure that you have those sorts of things, but also absolutely make sure that you keep the evidence. So one of my little suggestions is take photographs of the locks on the windows and the locks on the doors, and so that there is definitive evidence about what you have actually got. Because in case of a dispute later with the insurer, it makes it a lot easier if you've actually got photographs of your main possessions and all those things, as well as the security that you had. And I remember I did a show some years ago when I was down in Thirroul from the top of my roof, because this was in the year of the bushfires. And I went around and just wanted to show that I had completely cleaned the roof, cleaned the gutters, and it was completely and utterly as best as I could do in terms of maintaining it ahead of the bushfire season. And that's another thing I think it's worth doing, which is to build the evidence so that if in case of a problem, you've actually got it there in front of you, rather than trying to argue from the back foot without the evidence. If the insurer then comes and says, well, you can't do this because, or we won't refund this because, evidence is important.
And the other thing, Martin, last but no means least, I'm a stickler for making sure that the insurer is close by. None of these online centres that head office is overseas. Yep. It may be cheap, but there's a reason why they're cheap. I haven't heard very good stories historically with them, and so I say, I always stay local, somewhere you can, and I won't mention any names, but stay local is the go. And also to your point in terms of documenting, the cost of rebuild. I mean, it's all over the place. It's costing more. Document that and keep that on foot. And a lot of homes are underinsured. A lot of people think that they could still build a two-story, 240 square meter, internal square meterage home. They still think that they could build it for $500,000. It's crazy. A lot of homes, a lot of properties are underinsured.
Yeah, absolutely, unfortunately. And it is one of those areas where people cut corners because, of course, cost of living pressures are there. Insurance is about, in the worst case scenario, what might happen. And going right back to your earlier article there, of course, with the lift in bushfires and storms and floods, insurance is pretty critical. And I always think that even if you're in rental property, just think about the fact that your personal possessions in a rental property potentially could be at risk if there's a flood or a fire or whatever. And I do see quite a few people in the rental sector who specifically are underinsured as well. So it's worth thinking that through. Edwin, great conversation tonight. Thank you so much. And I hope that the rest of the week goes well for you. And I'll look forward to catching up with you. Well, can you believe it? Next Monday seems to come around very, 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 very quickly. I don't know. Somewhere I think somebody's nicked a day or two each week. So I will also just mention that tomorrow I've actually got a guest coming on, and we're going to talk about playing the property property game by new rules, and that's the guy who created Be Right, which is the auction site that actually allows you to bid for the real estate agent's fees. So feel free to come in and make comments, Edwin, if you like. It should be quite a fun conversation tomorrow as well.
All right, looking forward to it, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow, and I'll see you next week.
Take care. Bye-bye.